Within the spiraling, unending darkness of the void, there dwell the creators of a lesser multiverse. Called many names across species legends, the three are bound by a code never to sway decisions or seek worship from their creations. However, that hasn't stopped many attempts by individuals, entire species, and even the masters themselves to seek guidance and unravel their intentions. The dark entity, horse spirit, or elder guardian is exactly how he sounds. He is the eldest, the foundation of the realm, and is the most sought out of the three. He is believed to be benevolent and prolific, having more arms than his younger siblings to create hundreds of lifetimes and histories. His creations are notable for containing pieces of his mind, spreading his ideologies and going on adventures born from mind of creator rather than pen. The editor, Dear Spirit, or Mid-Guardian, is the second creator. She is known for her ability to create new souls using pieces of her own. She is the most spiritually interconnected with her creations despite being the least sought out. The Dear Spirit is considered prideful and ruthless given her background. After all, she did fracture her soul in a vain attempt to become one among her creations. She destroys realities and histories instead of creating them, attempting to establish order in chaos at the expense of those she gave life to. The Wild One, Panda Spirit, or Sub-Guardian, is the youngest. While she is not as prolific in creation or destruction, she is a balance of sorts, considered the ultimate judge of good and evil by her followers, even if that isn't necessarily her purpose. She is kind, attentive to her creations, and the most present as a near mortal of her universe and heart. She is also the most mischievous, breaking long-established codes far more blatantly than the others by sharing her eyes with her creations rather than her soul. Her creations have greater insight into those around them due to their gift of fair judgment. But before there was a panda spirit, there was a little girl in a candy factory, and this is her story. Hey everyone, I'm V for Verbatim, and I appear to have plenty of rations left from the Take One bowl I stole from on Halloween, an eternal reminder of my sins. But today we're going to be talking about more than just a few sweets, since today's video is about my sister. Across my time of drawing characters and writing stories, Sunfox has had almost as many iterations as me, whether that's been in the form of superheroes, anthropomorphized foxes, and of course, panda spirits. It makes sense though, since a lot of my characters were female when I started out, and my sister, as you can imagine, is a girl. What began as a sister self-insert became a really unnecessary plot thread that I've had to break down into the most essential pieces to make everything fall together in a more digestible way. So, with that said, let's just go straight into the story of the candy-coated hero Olivia Alvaro, or La Katrina. Think of this as a checkpoint in the breakdown of the entire Heroes Rising story, and a part 2 to the story of the Alvaros. Olivia was the 7th hero I ever made for my first team of heroes. Since I had a version of me on my team, it only made sense to also include a version of my sister. Back then she was called the Flex, and she gained the powers of super stretchiness when she got trapped in a taffy puller. Very Willy Wonka-esque, but the candy association was probably because my sister used to steal candy from me as a kid. I just associated her with candy and my lust for vengeance for my missing sugary morsels stolen one time too many. No bitterness at all, though admittedly I'm no gold star older sister either. The Flex, alternatively the name of a superpowered Chad, stayed mostly the same for years, with the lab rat look and the big hair characterizing her just as her curly hair still does for my real-life sister. Originally a crackhead move on baby Liz's part, she would hide guns in her hair. She was a literal toddler, but baby thumbs can still use guns, I guess. The years went on. Olivia didn't change much in appearance, but as her roles in the family changed over time, with my sister generally being considered the helpful one, Olivia changed accordingly. She became the bolder sibling of the duo, and the more responsible one, yet reckless one as well. Of the three of us, my sister's always had the biggest personality, I'd say, and she is the most well-rounded, even if at the moment I think she'd argue otherwise. She likes to cook, she plays video games with my brother sometimes, and she has way more friends than I've ever had. And you know what that sounds like? Perfect cannon fodder for my sister's OC. I've leaned into the cooking aspect over the years, connecting Olivia Alvaro to a candy maker known as the Alchemist. There was a time where Olivia Alvaro was a god and the ultimate judge of good and evil, but it just doesn't really fit anywhere, and it doesn't feel right for her character. so the weird loop-de-loops in Olivia's story have been ironed out into something a little easier to follow. Olivia's character is inspired by an army of others. Working at a candy factory, it's only natural that the story of Willy Wonka was significant in inspiring her creation. Her position as a scientist among 3 others is reflective of Vivaldi's 4 seasons. Olivia represents the movement spring, while the others reflect autumn, winter, and summer. Her power set is based on research I did into Mayan mythos and the origins of Dia de los Muertos, with the theme of the 4 elements used in the celebration of the holiday being inspiration for her own powers. Continuing on, La Muerte from the Book of Life and her origins in the original La Catrina inspired Olivia's general name and appearance. And her candy-coated nature is inspired by a grimdark story from my childhood called Something Sweet to Bite. This was kind of my way of untraumatizing myself with a kid-friendly candy creature, as opposed to one with thousands of mouths that would strip the skin off of people to slurp up their organs. God, the internet is a horrible, horrible place. Olivia starts out as a 14-year-old in Season 1 and ends the series at 28, though she will forever look 25 years old. She's 5'8" and a human with a mutated composition. As is the pattern with several characters, she's half and half, with half white and half Hispanic, with again half of her Hispanic side being Gravewalker lineage. Maybe this time Editor Liz will grant us with a pie chart. She has 2 older brothers, but the eldest, Gabriel, is no longer in their life. Simply put, Gabriel is one of my brother's characters, and his story doesn't exactly fit with the canon of the other Alvaros. Voidmaster shenanigans, the siblings only kind of remember Gabriel. Her birthday is August 14th, 2030. She's a straight, cisgender female, and like my sister, she's Christian, but since La Catrina and Dia de los Muertos have roots in Catholic tradition, I'll say she's Catholic for the sake of simplicity. She can speak English and Spanish fluently. And for our fun fact for the day, Olivia's design has only recently had a complex design upgrade with more interesting shapes and patterns after re-establishing her character in an alternate timeline. The most interesting versions of her character came from alternate timelines, honestly. The Silencer is a version of her infected with a mind virus, called the Silencer because she hunts down people in an apocalyptic landscape and cuts out their tongues. There's a steampunk version of her called the Chocolatier, and a Victorian-era assassin Olivia called Lady V, a cannibal Olivia with a human skin puppet in a zombie mafia post-apocalypse, and the specific incarnation I took influence from was a version of Olivia that was a skeleton superhero, with a secret identity as a chef that worked for her greatest rival. In my opinion, she's one of the most versatile characters I have to work with, being a kind face with plenty to hide across any era she finds herself in. Let's just do a quick rundown of the Gravewalkers for the people in the back that haven't seen part 1. The Gravewalkers were humanoid skeleton creatures that could take hold of corpses of humans as an undead skin. They were born from the remnants of the Maya Empire and their mythology. Their descendants, Skelehybrids, have diluted human hybrid blood, so they have their own human and Gravewalker skeleton form. However, they can take the corpses of others as a secondary form if their skeleton forms are somehow destroyed. Skelehybrids are usually female and have a strong connection to wind as well as fire, water, and earth. Now for Olivia's specifics. Unlike Eli's weak skeleton abilities, Olivia was able to access her skeleton form and manifest all 4 elements from a very young age, which had its own set of problems. In their family, one skeleton form was strong or weak based on how healthy one ate, how well one exercised, kind of like keeping a normal body healthy and strong. She was just a little girl, and back then she would eat lots of junk food. Her skeleton form is a reflection of this. She's a skeleton made entirely of sugar, and her powers are just as sweet. She favors her fire abilities, which are a deadly combination of flames and cinnamon. If her opponent is able to dodge her fireworks, they'll still choke on the fire in their lungs from the spices that linger in the air. Her water attacks, which are usually icy, are basically glaciers of peppermint. Her winds taste faintly of sour candy, and she has the ability to create sweetbreads, which serves very little purpose, honestly. Keep in mind that while she can utilize the 4 recognized natural elements, she's not overpowered. She can't indefinitely create her signature fire and water, since being made of sugar makes her susceptible to becoming too rigid or melted. Wind has a similar issue of making her more likely to crack or completely shatter from strain. Creating bread requires some of her own energy, since bread replenishes the energy of others, so she can't create bread indefinitely. Her limit for bread production is about a dozen loaves of bread on a good day. A normal day or a bad one has the capability of having that limit. Something important to note about Olivia is her eyes. They're lit by a mysterious candlelight, one that if extinguished would kill her. People that approach her eyes are overwhelmed with a feeling of zen, although it's a gentle effect and isn't at all permanent. Across Olivia's story, she's only gravely injured once or twice because of the strange effect that calms close-range attackers, but it's not really commented on or brought up because it's difficult to notice and because it was bestowed to her by the deer and panda spirits. It's mystical plot armor in simple terms, and while it protects her from physical harm, the psyche isn't as easy to protect. Olivia, as mentioned before, likes sweets. While that's less so in her waning childhood years, she still indulges in old habits from time to time. Let's just say that when the team makes hot cocoa, nobody accidentally grabs Olivia's drink. The overflow of whipped cream, peppermint swirls, and candy canes are basically a dead giveaway. Like Eli, she has an eye for aesthetics, but she utilizes her gifts in baking. Cooking is Olivia's job at the team's base, with Clara usually being her partner or co-chef in the kitchen. It would be a gag that you'd know whenever Olivia cooked dinner for the team because everyone weeps silently during dinner scenes whenever they eat her food. She's artsy in her own way, being the type to scrapbook and knit and bedazzle on occasions. She's the one to initiate bonding activities with the team, and even if it's not really a superpower, she can almost read minds because of how well she can read the people around her. Olivia is similar to Eli in that family comes first in her eyes. Needless to say, her view of her brother is mostly positive since he was always her elder but was still young enough to have fun with her. She appreciates his efforts to keep her safe even though she feels a little suffocated by all the attention he gives her. She also loved her parents more than anything else in the world, so they are also highly regarded in her eyes. We can't really get into his entire character in this video, but Andrew is an old co-worker of Olivia, and he's kind of a socially healthy version of Edward from Twilight. He's 100 years old and he kind of likes Olivia, though he keeps his distance even when she tries to pursue more with who she presumes is a 16-year-old. When their paths cross, they're cordial at worst and adore one another at best, but their future is uncertain after Season 4. Azaba is Olivia's closest friend on her team because they both are childlike in personality. The spunkiness of the two combined is a force to be reckoned with, since putting the two in the same room means that pranks and chaos are afoot. Azaba is the badass older sister Olivia never had, talking to her like an adult and taking her under her wing to make her into a little badass of her own merit. Cassidy is also a close friend as well as Olivia's leader, but their relationship is a little more complex. Cassidy is also a close friend as well as Olivia's leader, but their relationship is a little more complex. Since Cass takes on the appearance of someone of a much younger mind than her, Olivia originally thought that the two were the youngest people on the team. They didn't bond in the way that Olivia thought they would since they're both people of science, but they do eventually ease into little girl escapades, rekindling their childhood wonder together after losing it to the manipulative sculptors of their past. They don't spend time together as often as some of their closer friends, but they laugh longer and harder together because they don't have to act like adults around each other. Clara is kind of a surrogate mother figure for Olivia. She's not as uptight as her brother Eli is, but Clara wears her heart on her sleeve and is very affectionate. Olivia, meanwhile, is the most calm and quiet around Clara because she tries to absorb her sense of poise and wisdom from her old age. She takes Clara more seriously than anyone else on the team because after dealing with the loss of her parents, she recognizes that Clara as a half-ghost is one of the few people that can truly console her. Amber is a gray relationship. She doesn't hate Amber, she was another former co-worker and the two were both looked down on initially by their colleagues for their youth. They bonded over their lack of expertise and improved in their fields because of their mutual support and ability to laugh off their mistakes. However, Amber did hide a lot from Olivia, and their later meetings after Olivia becomes a hero sees them on opposite sides. Amber loses her mind, and while Olivia pities her downfall, she doesn't want to stay friends with a stranger that looks like her old friend, at least after their first reunion. The Alchemist on his own isn't a bad person if a little overzealous and misguided. He's her old boss and is far into his delusions of his research being the end-all only thing that matters. He still values his employees and cares for them, actively seeking them out once they scatter to the winds. Olivia chooses to overlook his better qualities, however, because the Alchemist is the reason that Olivia is an orphan. Also old co-workers, Della and Margaret have strained relationships with Olivia, and that's putting it lightly. Olivia comes to hate Della for her pettiness after Season 1, and feels nothing but sadness for what Margaret let herself become after their time together. Before Olivia's existence, the panda spirit was just a little girl from California. She couldn't even lift a crayon then, but she would become the master of an entire universe. Her elder siblings created the first worlds, with the younger of the two attempting to create a place for her sister in the untamed reality. With the eyes of the panda spirit and the soul of the deer spirit, Olivia was born in Chicago to the family called the Alvaros. Olivia Alvaro was the youngest of her siblings Gabriel and Emilio. She lived on the outskirts of Chicago in a relatively safe area with the gifts of a strong work ethic and perseverance that served her well. Although she always had a sweet tooth, and it was because of her habit of sneaking a candy bar or two every once in a while that when she activated her skeleton form for the first time, she was made entirely of sugar. Nevertheless, she and her family were happy, at least until she was 12. A massive fire ravaged her house, killing her parents and putting Eli into a coma after sustaining severe burns and lacerations. Initially having aspirations in the culinary arts, the loss of her family shifted her focus towards the medical field. She was afraid to be separated from what little family she had left, so Olivia Alvaro managed to rent out an apartment and take up multiple nurse-adjacent jobs by forging the names and social security information of family members. She had to get sneaky in order to keep her family and life together. She had very little in that period of her life because she had been dealt a bad hand. Her actions would have been villainized by an ignorant outside world, and yes, it's almost an immigration allegory, just go along with it. But she was still happy because she knew she was helping people in any and every way she could. She got a great, and pretty suspicious, offer from John Wilder, the owner of a massive candy company in the heart of Chicago. His offer was simple: a 6-figure salary, fully covered medical insurance for her and her brother, and the opportunity to renew lost identification papers for her family. The only catch was she needed to work for the CEO in secret. She didn't understand the implications at the time, but she and a select group of young scientists were brought together to study and harness a school of magic called karma, a series of enchantments that cause the affected to have select past actions, either good or bad, forced back upon them tenfold. So if you killed someone with a single stab wound, you would feel 10 stab wounds to your own body if karma was used on you with that specific sin in mind. The goal of the project was to find a way to use karma in a technological or enhanced form. Olivia was an amateur among them and was treated poorly at first. Regardless, she put in the effort, and because of this, the learning curve was steady for her. She quickly became Wilder's prized pupil. He cared so much for her in her mind that he set a really convoluted plan into motion. He erased her memories and had her checked into a Chicago hospital for a head injury, planning to have her join Cassidy Joyce as she looked for Brilliant's hero recruits at that hospital. She also planned to have her memories come back gradually over time, so that she would return to him with Cassidy Joyce's team as test subjects for his own experiments. It's all really dumb, there's a lot of moving parts that would have to move in just the right way for any of it to work, and there was a big hiccup he hadn't expected. Olivia didn't need to be smart to be chosen as a member of Cassidy's team, because she was born with her own powers. Thus, Olivia became the heart of the team rather than the brains, and it was through the discoveries of her team members instead of her that she ended up returning to the old candy factory. Olivia woke up in a hospital just as her brother awoke from his year-long coma. She was able to set herself up with a new job with Cassidy Joyce. She slowly forgot about the missing pieces in her head to focus on her new love of heroism. She wasn't without flaws, however. Reverted to her old self before her time with Wilder, she was naive and immature. She treated many of their early missions like they were games and was considered a liability in battle despite her generally lifting the spirits of her teammates. When Becky led an investigation into the mysteries of her team members, Olivia was set at the top of her list when she found a picture of the candy-coated hero in an abandoned lab. One thing leads to another, and Olivia finds herself interrogated over memories she didn't have. Agreeing to believe her, Becky leads a team to infiltrate Wilder's factory for answers, where they encounter the ghost of his research in a labyrinthine series of labs. Olivia finds herself lost in the labs ahead of her teammates and is deeply disturbed by its inactivity. She finds no one around, but begins to experience what she assumes are very real memories of her old companions, especially a friend of hers, Amber Jade. She remembers that she and her co-workers were all put under a spell, forced to forget everything from their time under him with the exception of one person in their life at the time. Olivia chose to remember Eli, Andrew, another scientist, chose to remember Olivia, another, Della, chose to remember Andrew, and Amber Jade realized a loophole, choosing to remember John Wilder, her father. Margaret, the eldest, tried to remember everything, which went horribly wrong and destroyed her, the other scientists, and a large part of the lab. Olivia realizes that her memories may not be memories when she's knocked unconscious by the explosion. When she wakes up, her team is imprisoned and her captor is revealed to be Amber Jade, who survived the original explosion and remembered everything, revealing to Olivia that John Wilder, alias the Alchemist, had watched Olivia grow up from afar and planned to take her under his wing before she became dedicated to science. Being alone for so long in the wreckage of her father's mistakes drove Amber mad. She donned the title and calculated persona of the Alchemist in preparation for Olivia's return, ready to recruit Olivia once again and complete her father's research. She reveals her ability to force a superpowered individual to use the full extent of their power, debilitating Avery with her own power and forcing Romeo and Eli's powers to overflow. Romeo and Eli's powers combining created the false reality for Olivia to relive the memories from her dreams. Amber continues to use her power to manipulate and control Olivia's perception of the actual severity of the situation, leaving Olivia confused and struggling to discern reality from fiction. In her moment of distress, she remembers what actually happened the day the scientists were killed. Olivia, seeing Margaret trying to remember everything, knew the outcome would probably kill her. The Alchemist's indifference to the loss of one of his scientists made Olivia realize that she and the others were his puppets. She entered her skeleton form and used her abilities to destroy the lab and the Alchemist with it. The realization leads Olivia to the conclusion that Amber would inevitably continue the cycle her father started, so she destroyed Amber and the rest of the lab, this time being able to save the ones she loved by trapping them in a glacier of ice. In the days following the fiasco at the labs, the rest of the team recognizes that Olivia with her restored memories is no longer the Olivia they knew. Since the Alchemist mini-arc takes place around halfway through Season 1, I'll technically be discussing the second half of Season 1 and then all of Season 2 here. Olivia becomes colder towards her brother and more prone to interacting with the scientific minds of her team. Her, Cassidy, and Avery become a trio of sorts, all three losing their innocent worldview in their early years at the hands of a male mentor. Olivia never uses karma in the series since she only ever studied it, but her studies of the School of Magic are considered by Cassidy in her later developments of gadgets. Pushed over the edge by her brother Emilio's overprotectiveness, Olivia has an explosive argument with her older brother followed by a less emotionally charged conversation, and Emilio loosens the reins on his younger sister in later adventures. Season 2 is more or less a continuation of Olivia's arc of independence. Eli and Olivia consider each other equals rather than older brother and younger sister. Across the season, they deal with aliens, gods, and a strange pattern of superhumans wearing mind control helmets, but with both of their focus on the right places, no attack or challenge is too great. It's a more balanced relationship, but Olivia's investigation into a baking supplies shortage ends with her kidnapping. She finds her way to a massive underground organization that creates the mind control helmets the heroes encountered over the season, and Olivia realizes that she was their original manufacturer when she worked under the Alchemist. The missing baking goods were a trap designed to lure her in for capture by the team of villains they had been fighting over the course of the season. She reunites with familiar faces from her past, Andrew, who remembers her, and Della, who despises her. The two work for the team of villains and encourage Olivia to offer her services to them to save her life. To keep her brother and team safe, Olivia agrees to serve the villains and is mostly off-screen for the rest of the season. Andrew agrees to join Olivia's team as an ally while Della disappears, vowing to bring back the Alchemist and Amber Jade to capture her once more. In Season 3, Cassidy Joyce is captured and her brother is lost in space with half of the team, so Olivia has to take up the mantle as the team's mechanic, though she spends most of the season dreading the prospect of returning to the workbench. Her last little project was almost used to enslave the entire city after all. As a 16-year-old with all of her lost memories returned by the third season, Olivia is older and wiser, and while the optimism of her youth is still alive and well, she becomes a more muted heart of the team, being the one to ease tensions with her soft-spokenness rather than an energetic call to action. While she's a member of Cassidy's rescue squad, infiltrating a villain academy to discover where its members have taken Cassidy, she doesn't keep her feet on the ground. Olivia spends her off time trying to build a rocket to go after her brother, and she tries to send out messages to the members of the team that are lost in space. All was going well with their spy work until who should appear at the academy but Della, Olivia's old lab partner and kidnapper in Season 2. Still having a hate boner for Olivia, she immediately reveals that Olivia and her team are spies. The headmaster, the one holding Cassidy hostage, reunites the team by placing them in captivity as well. There, their team is forced to fight for entertainment, and their enemy is another familiar face. Margaret, the scientist who tried to remember everything about her time with the Alchemist. The woman is completely delusional and attempts to kill the heroes on sight, with Olivia's pleas to her going unheard. Olivia is forced to kill her old friend. but instead of grieving or using the various scraps around her to create a weapon to destroy the Academy in revenge, she uses the scraps to create a modified version of Cassidy's signature gadget, which will be a topic for the next video. Without giving too much away, the team is able to escape with the tool and with Cassidy. After an extensive chase with the Phoenix Academy members coming after the heroes, they return home to even worse news. Avery's mentally fractured, Clara's gone, and Olivia's brother is dead. A team of over 15 heroes was slimmed to 10 over the next 13 years. By 2057, Olivia has accepted her brother's death with as much grace as she could manage. To cope, she would send messages into space for her brother, hoping that wherever he was in the universe, they would somehow reach him. On top of her duties as a member of her team, she began leading courses for young superheroes, imparting the wisdom she gained from her experiences into the next generation. She was one of the few that never stopped fighting, using her gifts to keep standing when her former teammates no longer could. However, she wanted to tie up loose ends and gain complete closure. She had a team of heroes set up in California to keep an eye on Phoenix. She and Andrew worked together to find Della and lock her up for good. She went to space to find the man that had killed Eli, and she had a long discussion with him that ended with a promise to reunite the lonely man with his kin. She became closer to Romeo since he was one of the closest people to her brother, and she made it a mission to find the Alchemist and Amber Jade to finally bring them to justice. The two had taken on new identities but stayed in the business of candy. So while it wasn't hard to find them, the meeting between the three is a source of conflict for Olivia in the last season. She doesn't want to return to them, but she recognizes that she needs closure. Romeo has to be the one to convince her to finally return to her old boss, mostly so Olivia remains oblivious to Clara's return to Earth as a villain. Olivia finds Amber and the Alchemist with Andrew as backup, and the four immediately become offensive, attacking one another because they expect as much from each other. Andrew has to be the one to stop the conflict when he realizes the Alchemist and Amber are just as afraid as him and Olivia, and they sit down to talk. Kind of anticlimactic, but the Alchemist admits that he's lived for centuries and wanted to maintain the balance of good and evil as a follower of the Panda Spirit and a scholar in the ways of karma, and that he chose Olivia as a follower because he recognized that she was gifted with the eyes of the Panda Spirit, so she must be significant. He tries to convince her that he cared for all of his followers equally, which is why he took their memories and plans to make them into heroes. Olivia admits that she isn't anything special as a hard worker that was taken advantage of him, and that regardless of his belief in her, she wasn't what he was looking for, and neither were the others he exploited. Andrew and Olivia part ways with the Alchemist once and for all and are joined by Amber, who also wishes to cut ties with her father for using her. The three begin to repair their relationship after decades of being apart, and they end up fighting together in the final conflict of the series. In the end, Olivia repairs her lost friendships and vows to never be a hero, a puppet to her creator, ever again. And she sets out with her friends and even her revived brother to live life independent of those that defined her early years. This video was as much about my sister as it was about a character I made. My sister, in a lot of ways, has placed a lot of expectations onto herself because of our family. My dad's just naturally good at most things and has experienced so much in life. My mom is an iron lady in a male-dominated field. My brother's in college and is obviously our older brother. And I'm writing stories and making videos for fun. She wants to live up to our family, and honestly, I don't know if that's possible for any of us. I may elaborate on that at some point in the future, but I'll say this. Olivia Alvaro is a reflection of what I think my sister is capable of. She can be the heart of the group, the life of the party, or she can be the brains, or the wise listener, or the warrior on the front lines. She could be a chef, or a scientist, or a superhero if she put her mind to it. While she can be emotional at times, it's that emotion that gives her empathy and strength when others lack it themselves. Regardless of what my sister decides to pursue in life, Olivia is how I see my sister, and maybe that's as a little girl that likes sweets and hides guns in her hair. But that's my sister, and as she continues to change, Olivia Alvaro will change with her. Thanks for watching this one, guys. This is Viva Verbatim signing off until the next video. Take care and go call your mom or siblings, maybe wish them a Merry Christmas, and as always, be excellent to each other. Bye!